What's up and welcome to another episode of Gizmo Slip Tech. Today we're comparing the Razer Blade Pro 17 versus the Alienware M17 R3. These are two extremely powerful, thin and light gaming laptops. Now we have the highest end spec configurations with the RTX 2080 Super in both of these machines. Now we're going to be talking about basically everything when it comes to these two laptops: the display, the internals, the thermals, the performance. We're going to be comparing benchmarks, battery life, and of course overall bang for the buck that you get with both of these machines. And at the end I'll also give my recommendation of which one I think is better for different types of people. Let's go ahead and dive into it with our first pro, that the Alienware M17 has higher performance components. This stems primarily from the increased power limits that you have on both the GPU and the CPU. If you take a look at the power limits, you can see that the Alienware has a 150 watt power limit GPU, where the Razer has a 90 or 100 watt power limit GPU, depending on which performance profiles you set up. And when it comes to CPU usage, the Razer maxes out at 55 watts, where the Alienware can get up to 100 watts sustained load, which is a very high amount of throughput for a chassis this thin and light. One interesting thing here to note is that because the Alienware puts so much more power to the GPU, that the Razer Blade actually has more wattage available to the CPU when under a dual GPU and CPU load, which might explain why the Razer does have better performance than the Alienware in some titles. First up, we have 3D Mark Time Spy graphics. You can see the Alienware does score quite a bit better, busting the 10,000 points mark, which is really impressive for a laptop that's this thin and light. The Razer Blade Pro 17 doesn't perform bad. It's a big step up from the RTX 2080 Max Q, but it is not quite matching the Alienware's performance. But if we take a look at the points per pound category, you can see that the Razer actually catches up and passes the Alienware here. So if you're looking to pack the most power per pound, the Razer Blade is very competitive. That said, neither of these laptops are particularly great points per dollar. Graphically speaking, you're paying a lot of extra money for these two laptops, so just know that going into a purchase like this, that if you're looking for the best bang for the buck, don't look at these laptops. You're paying for a lot of premium features on both of these machines. Taking a look at the Cinebench R20 multi-score, you can see that the Alienware M17 really outperforms the Razer Blade in this test, and that goes back to that power limit. You know, the Razer can only put 55 watts of power through the CPU at any one point in time. That severely limits the long-term throttled performance of the Razer when compared to the Alienware M17. When it comes to CPU performance per pound, the Alienware does really well here. The Razer does pretty well too, but it's not incredible performance per pound. And when you take a look at the performance per dollar, neither of these laptops do very well, with the Razer coming in dead last, even less performance per dollar than the Alienware Area 51M, which is an extremely expensive machine. The real question, of course, is how did these laptops perform in real life tests? Well, we've got my Handbrake 4K render time test. You can see that the Alienware does the exact same render more than a minute faster. So if you're looking to do lots of CPU processing, the Alienware is definitely the way to go. Taking a look at some real life gaming performance, and you can see that these laptops are extremely close, with the Alienware eking out a tiny lead in 3 out of 4 games. Now these numbers really took me by surprise, because I was expecting the Alienware to be beating out the Razer by like a 10% margin, which just isn't the case. It's more like a 2 or 3% margin when it comes to actual gaming tests. Now the last thing I'll mention is that the fan noise on both of these devices can get fairly loud if you're on maximum fans, but generally speaking, if you keep the device on like a medium profile, you're looking at really reasonable decibels, right around the 48 decibels for both devices. Now the M17 R3 comes with an overclockable CPU, but to be able to take advantage of that, you're gonna have to do a lot of tweaking, which kind of brings me into my next major pro for the Alienware M17 R3, is that it is overclockable, much more overclockable than the Razer, for example. The power limits on the Razer are much more like solidly built into the firmware, and you can't really bypass them easily. Whereas the Alienware, you've got power limit access right through Intel XTU. So what these power limits mean is basically you have very similar GPUs and very similar CPUs, but you're just able to put more electricity through the components in the Alienware, thus giving you a little bit more performance. Now, when it comes to internal temperatures, the Razer Blade Pro with the reduced power limits really takes the cake here. The Razer Blade Pro runs very cool on the GPU and CPU the vast majority of the time and in the vast majority of instances. If you're someone who's very temperature conscious, the Razer Blade Pro will overall have better temps, but they're kind of artificial in my mind, because the only reason that they're not higher is because Razer has really limited the power limit on the CPU, which kind of sucks, right? Yeah, I wish that we had an unlocked CPU here so we could really push the thermal envelope when we have that wiggle room to increase the clock speed. So that means that if you're someone who really wants to maximize on your performance of your laptop, and you know how to tweak the CPU and GPU and you use a laptop cooler, or you like to repaste your CPU GPU paste, then the Alienware really gives you that leeway to take advantage of all the performance that the machine has to offer. Now let's talk displays on both of these devices. The Alienware has a 300 nits, about average level of color gamut and brightness for a gaming laptop these days, where the Razer has a extremely bright 430 plus nit brightness display with a 100% Adobe RGB. Now I measured it a little bit lower than that when I used my Spider 5 Elite, but basically if you're someone who loves a very poppy, colorful screen, the Razer is just so much better in this department, and it's still 120 Hz refresh rate, and it's very quick response. So you can still play competitive shooters, but it's not going to be as quick a response or as high a frame rate as what you get with the 300 Hz display on the Alienware. Now of course you can configure a 4K screen on the Alienware that's actually a little bit brighter than this one, 500 nits, but it's only a 60 Hz display. So if you want to be able to be competitive and have a high refresh rate, high resolution display, higher color gamut, you're gonna need to go with the Razer if you want to be able to game well on it as well. Now, the Razer does offer a 300 Hz display option with the RTX 2080 Super. So if you're into a really high refresh rate display, you do have that option on the Razer as well. Now let's talk battery life with these two particular machines. It's kind of weird, honestly, on both of them. Now with the Razer, you do have NVIDIA Optimus with the 4K display, but in order to use that NVIDIA Optimus, you're gonna have to restart the machine into the Optimus mode, unless you just keep it in the Optimus mode, which is totally fine as well. But when you're in that mode, you don't have the 120 Hz refresh rate, so you're kind of having a big trade-off here. Now with the Alienware, you also have a trade-off because the vast majority of configurations does not come with NVIDIA Optimus, and that's going to severely hamper the battery life as well. So if you don't opt for an NVIDIA Optimus configuration with the Alienware, the battery life is going to be way better on the Razer. But if you do opt for an NVIDIA Optimus on the Alienware, you should have a little bit better battery life in the M17. Now the configurations, as best I can tell, with the M17 that comes with NVIDIA Optimus is the 144 Hz and 4K panel options without G-Sync. That's the best I can tell. No guarantees there. If you really want NVIDIA Optimus, I would make sure to contact Dell before finalizing your order to make sure that it comes with it. When it comes to entertainment, the Razer Blade Pro 17 is just so much superior. Not only do you have significantly better speakers, the speakers also have left-right sound isolation, so you kind of get a surround sound effect when you're watching movies, or when you're playing video games, you can hear footsteps on the left and right without even having headphones on. The Alienware has front-firing speakers. They are loud, but the clarity is not there, and your left-right audio separation is also not as good. And when it comes to watching a movie in bed with a laptop on your chest, for example, the touch display on the screen is really, really nice for clicking next episode or selecting, browsing a screen, or just browsing the web. The Razer's touch display makes this machine a much more versatile entertainment type of device, where the Alienware is more of a pure gamer and classic laptop type of use scenario. Now, one pro for both of these devices is that they do offer a wide range of different models, ranging in price by quite a bit. However, the Alienware's configurations are more versatile and more budget friendly on the lower end. Now, this doesn't really need to be said, but both of these laptops I think are stylish as hell. The backlight on these keyboards are top of the line. Every single symbol is lit up on both keyboards, and it's super bright, super visible. Of course, Alienware has these incredible lights all over the back and the front, and the logo on the back even. The Razer, on the other hand, has a unibody all metal chassis that's just super, super firm. I mean, both of these have great build quality, very little flex, but there's a little bit more flex in the Alienware. So if you're looking for something that's super rigid, the best build quality, the Razer is top of the line when it comes to that. And of course, the Razer has a very clean design with the unibody chassis and the edge-to-edge Gorilla Glass touch display. It really doesn't get better than this when it comes to touch display interfaces on a big gaming laptop, as well as the touchpad. The touchpad on the Razer is just a cut above the touchpad on the Alienware. The touchpad here is just a little bit smaller. The click, it feels a little more plasticky, and the top of the touchpad cannot be clicked right up here, where on the Razer, you can still click right along the top. So a little more versatile, a little bit classier touchpad on the Razer as well. Now, when it comes to keyboards, I think the Alienware trounces the Razer. We have deeper key travel here, an overall better feel for the keys, though the feel is pretty good with the Razer too. But the layout on the Alienware is incredible. We have a full numpad, we have dedicated home and page up, page down buttons, and the arrow keys are positioned very nicely and easy to use. The arrow keys on the Razer are terrible, and you lack those dedicated function buttons, being relegated to using FN and the arrow keys if you want to do those home and page up, page downs. So if you're looking for a highly functional keyboard, the Alienware is the way to go as well. Both of these laptops have an excellent selection of ports. The only thing I'll say is that the Alienware does not have a full-size SD card slot, but it kind of makes up for that with the Alienware graphics amplifier port, which will perform just slightly better in an external GPU solution than using the Thunderbolt 3 and the Razer Blade Pro. So let's say you buy either of these laptops, let's say an RTX 2060, and then a couple years from now you want to use an external GPU to boost your gaming performance by using a Razer Core X or an Alienware graphics amplifier cage, and both of those are going to perform great, but the Alienware amplifier is going to perform just a little bit better, so it kind of edges that out in here. But the Razer checks every single box when it comes to ports, including a full-size SD card slot, so no complaints there at all. I basically don't say that about very many laptops, so this one's got a great port selection. Now, there's something really special about both of these laptops, and this is going to be true of most laptops for 2020. USB-C power delivery charging is so fantastic and so versatile. If you move your laptop around your house a lot, this can be very useful. If you need extended battery life on road trips or when traveling, then you will also find this to be super useful. This allows you to basically get 2.5 times your battery life than you normally would. You take a battery bank like this can output 100 watts of power through the USB-C port, and I'll have links down below to these, or you can use a wall adapter. This is gonna put out 100 watts of power as well, and you can also use this just as a USB hub as well, so you can put this in the backpack, multiple uses, which is really cool. Now, an adapter like this is going to both run your laptop and charge it through light use, like browsing the internet or watching Netflix. It'll also mostly power the laptop fairly well in gaming scenarios, as long as the game isn't too demanding. If you want to see my full review on the USB-C adapter as well as battery banks, I did a comparison review a few days ago. I'll have links to it in the description down below. So, which of these laptops do I recommend more? Okay, I think this is one where we have two fantastic laptops, two fantastic choices, and it's really going to come down to personal preference and what you value as a consumer. Do you want the maximum possible performance and you don't care about the price? Then get the Alienware. You're going to get more performance and more power in this particular machine. That said, you're gonna run high temps. It's not gonna be quite as good for watching movies and for a multi-use type device. You know, the Razer can kind of double as a tablet in some ways because of the touch display. And the other thing I'll say is that if you're a really competitive gamer in fast-paced titles like you love Valorant or Counter-Strike or Apex Legends or Fortnite, the Alienware is just gonna be a little bit better. The Razer can still play those games and play them really well, but the response rate isn't quite as fast. It's still really good, still perfectly playable, but this device really shines for more casual gamers that just absolutely love having a high color gamut, high resolution display to just get really immersed in the games that they play. And of course you have the multifunction use of the Razer with its better speakers and better display for watching movies or browsing the web with the touch interface. All right, that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit that like button. And if you want to help support the channel and you want to see more of my tech reviews, hit that subscribe button. It really does make a big difference to me. It's my dream to become a full-time tech YouTuber, to make my primary living from making tech videos, and your subscription and the interacting with the video, commenting on it, liking it, really just goes a long way to helping my channel grow and to the size that it needs to be able to make a living from it. So thanks for tuning in. I'll see you in the next one. Brandon out. Watch out.